We're back. And all together this time, which
Good
is
eye, mate.
amazing.
The whole crew.
The whole crew,
Yep.
which is amazing. Yeah, yeah.
The Amigos back together
The
again.
Amigos back together. Yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. I guess we want to talk about a post that someone put up about is Clash of Kings too fast or is it too slow? You know, in terms of the amount of changes, the pace of changes. You know, it's funny. Didn't we have a whole episode about this from the Masters back in Dallas of last year?
It sounds like we've talked about it at some point.
Yeah, I think
It
in
does
that
seem to be something that comes up every once in a
Yeah.
while.
we were comparing it to GW though.
Yes.
We were calling it the rate of change, right? And so
Yeah.
Oh,
but
yeah,
we're happy
yeah.
to talk about it again. You know, it's a topic that's near and dear to all of our hearts. What have we been up to? Anybody been working on stuff? I've been working a ton. What have you guys been doing?
Well,
I'm working on 3 regiments of EJs. So
yeah.
I think I'm pretty well.
I'm batch painting for the first time like ever. So I started. Well, let me start with this first. I got some new bases in. Got them all done. So this is gonna be a new pike horde.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then this is the Fanatics. This is the cave. I don't know I haven't come up with a name yet,
Oh.
but it's gonna have a name. And
Is it going to be like a brewery or like a religious fanatics or
so you guys know I have background story. So the background story is they are children of the fall, just like
Right.
in Rodria. So they're the ones that want to go back to the previous time before the breakage of the mirror. And so these I don't know how else is going to come in, but these are the guys I'm using.
Oh, nice. I like that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
those
I'm
are
not going to focus very well for you, but
Like
the
a
little-
like a zealot.
Yes.
yeah. So I took a lot of good advice. I did not paint them white.
Yep.
So
Avoiding white and red and
avoiding white cloaks.
Anything with a
Yeah.
hood and white, I think it's just easiest not to avoid. It's
Yeah.
easiest to avoid. Yeah.
So I'm probably gonna do them mostly in orange, and then I might do the character in like a different color or maybe a triple color. I'm not 100% sure, but
Yeah.
I did 8 of these guys at one time, and you know what I think this color scheme is actually the easiest to blend out of the turquoise and the white. This is the easiest. So darker tones are easier to blend.
Yeah. And this is 8's a big batch for you?
8's huge. I usually do 1
Okay.
or maybe 3. Right. A lot of times if I'm painting a unit, I'll paint like just a couple models at a time.
Right.
And then, and I took 8 of the same pose. So, and I've got, there's only 3 poses of these guys plus a hero.
Right.
So I'm trying to these guys are pretty like nondescript. They're just like holding 2 blades next to each other. So I took like 20 of these or 15 of these, and then I've added 2 more, like 8 or 9 of the other 2 poses. But I do have a Witch Hunter that I'm going to put up there too.
Nice.
He's going to be ready to rock and roll. By the way, go ahead.
Oh, is he gonna be the instigator or gonna be in the unit?
He'll probably just be in the unit. But I like what you just said though about the Fanatic Instigator. Like, man, those guys seem pretty sweet on paper. Yeah, and then the fact you can get Rally 1 from the Monarch, right?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, he could give that the Berserkers rally or the Fanatics Rally 1,
Mhm.
and then the Monarch can give them Vicious.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and by the way, I'm playing this freaking Knight formation, right? How did I miss the Foot Guard or Knights?
Yes.
I could have been playing Night Guard. I could have been playing.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah, I
I'm like-
remember talking about that formation with Sam up here on when it first came out because we both run large hordes of Foot Guard, and we're like, Foot Guard or Knights. Monarch kind of synergizes really well with hordes of Foot Guard.
Yeah. So that's what I've been up to. I've been playing lots and lots of games, not successfully. I took Kyle Poole's Goblins to a draw. That was a win in my book. And then
that's a
I've
good
had
game.
like mixed success against one of my regular opponents is playing the triple air elemental, and it's just like it's
Yeah,
just
that's
kicking the shit out-
problematic.
It's kicking
really
the shit out
tough.
of me, man.
Yeah, it's very
Like
tough to
if
play
the
against.
cannons go off and I can knock because he's got 2 regiments of the heart piercers. If I can knock those guys out,
Yeah.
then I can be like, okay, cool. I have time to deal with the guys. But man, sometimes he just rushes me and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And I think it's bullshit that they have druids that can do 2 spells in a turn. And all my shit's like, no, I can do 1 main chant. It's like, what the hell,
Yeah.
man?
Mate, that's what you get for playing Kingdoms of Men.
I know. I
Yeah.
know.
Well,
Well,
Blade Walker
it's true.
druids are a problem, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They are a
the
problem.
great army of blandness.
Yeah. Yeah.
What
and
about,
probably
you,
I don't
Alex
really
and
have any
Jeremy?
points.
What are you guys doing?
Well, I'm clearing off some space on my shelves for some new hardware.
Oh, for winning your own tournament. Yeah.
Speaking of winners, we got Billy Henninger, who
Yeah.
just came off a big win of Lady of the Lake.
Lady of the Lake champion.
Yeah.
Congrats,
Yeah,
buddy.
congratulations.
I don't remember Billy saying hello to us before on the stream.
No, I think
so-
he's.
Well,
I think he's like
I think he only comes
making
in
his
when he
presence
wins.
known. He's like, "Hey
You know what?
guys,
For sure, he's not going to be the third best player
Please
in the Mountain
mention me
League
now
anymore.
that I'm a winner.
humble
Yeah.
brag," but I just
I
kind of
will come and have my accolades.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's
so
he's
you're-
having his King Arthur moment.
Uh-huh.
are you working on anything else, Alex, or just clearing
well, I
shelf
think-
space?
Now that I'm just completely run out of time for Crossroads, I'm going to stick with Rats, as everyone already knew, and I have accepted. So I think I think I'm going to actually paint Scud because I have the real Mantic Scud, and I've been using an old Reaper Demon as Scud for the past few years, which I like. But I think I have 4 weeks to paint. So it's one big piece, which should go pretty quickly, and I think it'll be a nice. He's a much bigger model than my current Demon, so I think it'll be a better centerpiece for the Ratkin. So I think just kind of stick with my list and just keep running what's been working so far this summer tournament season, and then go with that.
What about you, DJ Sick Fade?
Oh, thank you. So we have Bay of Kings coming up at the end of September. So I will be taking the Baysalians trademark to Bay of Kings. It's 1995. Baysalians are pretty good at that points level, and then it's not putting me in another paint rush to, still working on the Twilight Kin forever. #sad. But we did. We recorded the first half of a new narrative workshop episode that's going to be coming out soon with Mark Barber, talking about his two new sequels to Steps to Deliverance, which has been one of the more popular, Kings of War books. So we're going to have that episode coming out soon with Mark Barber, and then also Brandon Rossbaum will be talking, with Mark about his books, but then we'll be talking about, the overarching sort of release schedule for Winged Hussar. So that was fun. It's not hobby painting related, but it was getting the hobby juices to organize a show and to record something. So with Ben Stoddard getting ready for Refugees of the Old World. So it's been nice though, taking a couple weeks off post Masters to just really let the hobby, that really drive to paint start to build up again, to kind of just take a little break. So so it's been going pretty good.
Nice. I'm actually about to record an episode too, but it'll be solo, where I am going to rewrite Panathor in terms of we've talked about it on the show before, but I don't think we've done an episode in a while on culling armies, and I'm going to do it in terms of how would I, on top of the existing ones that have already gone that way, take it in a more Mantic IP direction.
Like what armies would you get rid of, basically?
Get rid of and amalgamate and maybe rebrand.
Cool.
Sounds
So we'll see.
exciting.
We'll see that.
I think I got it down from. No, I'll record it today and then I'll edit it tonight. Yeah, I think I got it down from 29 to 21.
Is it 29 really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, 29
Wow.
if you count Jarvis, I think, as a separate.
Oh,
faction.
okay.
Yeah.
Still a lot.
I always say that there's not too many factions, that there's just enough, but then when I hear that number, I go,
Maybe a
Maybe
little.
Well, and I
that's
think
maybe
it's relevant to our topic today, right? In that balancing that many enemies is tough.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, Alex, you had the idea for today. Maybe you should
So I think
lead us to our main topic.
I think it was Cy Brand. He kind of posted something on Fanatics that I saw about whether or not and I think this past year was a bit of an anomalous cock pack because it was larger. It had built up.
An anomalous cock. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the pressure had built up over the pandemic. And
We got in trouble for that kind of verbiage before.
We just needed a really big release.
yeah, and
You can't say that
I think,
stuff anymore, guys.
I think it made a bit of a mess in the meta, and it's taken a while to.
100% agree. 100% agree. I think it was huge, right?
And so I think it presents an interesting point where people are saying, well, we're just getting into the meat of, you know, the Clash of Kings, where like people are fully integrating a lot of the new stuff into the meta and taking advantage of it and exploring all the different aspects that change. Because I don't think, you know, a lot of regions were still coming out of, you know, lockdowns over Christmas and stuff like that. I know that we were here, so we didn't have a lot of in-person gaming until, you know, February, March, and I think it's taken time, and there's a lot of hobby friction involved with army building in real life. And I think as people transition away from UB in real life gaming, it takes time for people to get all the new changes integrated into their play style, learning all the different things, even just being able to try out new things and see if they
I'm
work.
sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. My new gaming PC's just being wheeled through the door. Yes.
All
Does
right.
that work?
Yeah, work. I get it delivered.
You
to
don't
work
you don't
just
get those
actually
things
here.
shipped to home because
Well, I didn't know if it was staying at work. Is my point. Is it going to
Yeah.
be staying?
No,
at
it's
work?
not staying at work. I'll bring my old one to work, and that one will stay at home.
yeah.
Okay.
No, so
But sorry,
yeah, I
Alex,
think
continue.
no, that's fine. My monologue isn't that important, but I think it's a good point. Like, what's the right size of Clash of Kings to integrate into the community on a yearly basis, or do we want to have a narrative Clash of Kings alternate with a competitive tournament-based Clash of Kings alternate years, so that people have 2 years to integrate the changes? Or was this year truly an anomaly where we think it's not a problem at all?
Yeah. Who wants to go? Who wants
Well,
to go first?
I'll chime in first by saying I don't think we can slow it down. I don't think we can go changes like every 2 years. I think from a competitive standpoint, I think we would be in trouble. From a competitive standpoint, I think it would be difficult to have things be that stale for that long, because we've talked about it. Like, if you don't change anything, then what's good is what's good, right?
Yeah.
And I know it gives people a chance to find a bigger opportunity for more people to find the what's good and to play with it. But the reality is, it's kind of boring after a while. Like, okay, I mean, I remember the olden times when, like, goblin shooting was a thing, and like it's still a thing, but like a real thing where it was like, oh, ouch. And and if they didn't take an opportunity to nerf it a little bit, I don't know, like it probably would have hurt my willingness to stick around. So for me, I think 1 year is the sweet spot of change.
I think you raised a good point. Sorry,
you could say the same about Nine Stalkers now, right? You know what? You would not want to leave that army another 12 months.
No. Yeah,
Right,
so I think to that point where it's whether we can integrate all the changes and find all the different ways to like make fun armies with the new rules. But it's like, if there's a problem, it needs to be addressed, right? And
I thought you were breaking a Vanilla Ice. There's a problem. I'll solve it. No, I was expecting it. I was hoping.
I think we have come to probably expect a little bit too much from Clash of Kings. I do think that's probably a thing, and I think they could afford to play with how we play the game a little bit more, so much than the armies. Do they give us new scenarios? That was a thing for a while, right? That was a thing for a while.
You have to also say that like the Clash of Kings from last year was really an anomaly, and how much stuff we had. That was really a 3.5. Like not so much in the rules, right? It was here's the army, the 3.5 version of all the armies. So I think we're feeling that year turnaround, or maybe a little bit stronger this year, and just because of how much stuff was released. I like the idea of the yearly update, but I think what is in the yearly update, that's the thing that doesn't necessarily need to be new units every time, right? Or doesn't necessarily need to be. But I think expecting a sort of new book that lets you play the game in different ways or tweaks balances, I think the once a year is as far out as you want to have it.
Yeah, Luke makes a point that I was about to say, actually, is that I would be happy with nerf what needs to be nerfed and play with something like formations. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a second. Take one away and put another one in. I mean, I think there's some value in adding, but play with that, like you brought up, Alex, more that side that also plays into a bit of narrative as well as gameplay.
the auras and keywords and character-based things that are not formations, but essentially formations, I think there's a lot of room for growth there. And I think scenario, I don't know. Up here, especially in one-day tournaments, we kind of don't like the bluff token scenarios because you get some of the casual players, and they're kind of poorly designed scenarios. If you figure out how to play them, they don't go well for someone who doesn't know how to play them
They do reward more experienced players,
by
absolutely.
a large margin. Like it, and it gets ugly quickly. And I feel like removing one of those, or even just like swapping in and out 3 or 4 scenarios into the mix, would go a long way.
I
think
agree.
Yeah.
You go, Jeremy.
I was going to say the Clash of Kings doesn't always necessarily have to be only one thing, right?
No.
The Clash of Kings update can be whatever you want. It came about as a way to sort of like, here's how you run a tournament. Here's, it came sort of from the seed of competitive play, but it doesn't mean it has to be that way. Like you said, they can do new scenarios or tweak formations or whatever. So I think that is something for them, a nice like ground for them to explore is, what do they wanna? But I still think in general for a game that doesn't have new rule content, they're releasing models. To me, that once a year update of whatever it is a really exciting time. And I think if you spread that out too much, you'd get staleness, or like you say, you'd get these armies that maybe are a little too good. And not have an opportunity to update that.
And no matter how much you play test something, but like with 29 armies, which is why I think armies do need somewhat of a cull, but not with like eliminating models style, just they get incorporated elsewhere, it is really hard. No matter how much you play test something, there are going to be unintended consequences. That's what happens when you have volunteers testing your game. When you don't have big lead times necessarily for planning. It's just if you leave it longer than a year, the problems become more problematic. And like Rob said, that would if I had to now spend another year of more and more people building Night Stalkers armies, that would really frustrate me. And like not everyone does that because not everyone cares about competition, right? But it's also a great IP army anyway. So like people can totally build it from a fluff perspective, but because of the power level, they'll still smash face.
Yeah, I mean that army's not going ever. Even if it was to be slightly tuned down a little bit, like most of us believe that it's not crazy out of position, but it has too many slightly too good stuff, right? It's still going to be a super strong army, with a great model range, And
I don't think it needs huge changes to bring it down.
No, it's just a few small changes, and that's the thing with Kings where. When you have good balance in general, when you have a couple things that are just a little bit too good, it really exacerbates that problem because everything else is pretty in a tight range. So as soon as you get above that range, it gets problematic.
Yep, I agree, and I'm totally on the same page as Rob. I think yearly is right. But it's about, what is that content? And I actually think, we just need to be careful because, again, COC is essentially being produced by volunteers. I think we can't set our expectations too high for that. And I think you would have to be prepared that maybe there'd be an occasional year where they went, you know what, all we need is a few nerfs. Maybe we should just do a PDF.
Well, because like it used to be like 40, 50 pages, right? Like just a small and like with a bunch of fluff and like a campaign built in, right?
Well, and I think.
Go ahead.
I just was speaking to what Matt was saying. And they may in the future decide to do different tests in different ways. But how they've done it so far is you have a group of testers and they provide feedback. And like this last testing round, it was a lot harder for a lot of U.S. players because it was happening in the prep to masters, right? Whereas the COC pack that we tested, the big one, that really got heavy duty testing by a lot of US players after Masters. So I think it comes to that point of when you have that sort of cycling of people trying to help out, maybe one testing cycle, you just have more people testing just by the nature or more people providing in-depth, detailed, leverageable, actionable feedback. It's just the nature of people's lives, are always changing.
Absolutely.
Well, what you said, Matt, though, about doesn't have to be a big book every year, right? Well, those are the years that you bring out siege rules. Those are the years you bring out asymmetric play. Those are the ones where you bring out the narrative, as Luke was mentioning. Bring out some more narrative scenarios. The ones in Edge of the Abyss and not Edge of the Abyss, Destiny of Kings. Those are great. Those are a lot of fun.
Or maybe you want to test a new rule or a rule change, add it as an optional rule in the Clash of King pack.
Well, they did that before, right? They did that before, like Heavy Flyer and some of those.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Use the Clash of Kings pack to get a little bit more robust testing of a new feature you're sort of interested in.
I was absolutely about to say the same thing. They should. I reckon it would be really good for them to think it a little bit more experimentally.
Yeah.
All right, let's tweak this, and especially with scenarios, right? They could start now with the books on going. Let's test scenarios that we might want in our version 4 rulebook in a few years' time. And Luke said optional rule.
Like since most TOs, it's like we look to Clash of Kings as to set the tone for the competitive season, right? And so if you have that base set of rules, and then you have like, okay, here's 2 pages of optional rules, right? And it gives TOs some, another option to like differentiate their tournaments with something that's potentially a little bit play tested, but not fully play tested. Just something to mix it up that is, pre-packaged for them, so they don't have to come up with anything. And they're like, here, we're gonna take page 1 of the optional rules or whatever, and we're just like gonna use those for this one.
Yep.
I mean, they could also do a generals compendium like the GW used to do back in the day, which would hopefully tie Armada, Vanguard, and Kings of War together in some form of narrative play.
Well, yeah, that's the dream, right? Have some sort of like a Vanguard game influence Kings of War, and the Kings of War campaign that ties into an Armada campaign and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Into a brand new 10mm massive.
No, I want 3 mil. 3 mil.
3 mil.
Just carpets.
Just do it. Just do it. Make it happen.
Yeah.
So Dave Fanning does have a question about global campaign. I don't think there is one on the horizon. But what happened to the International Campaign Day we used to have?
Well, I think you've got to remember with International Campaign Day, it was community driven, wasn't it?
So what's going on, Mark and Chris and Red Stoddard? I think they were the ones that ran it. Maybe we'll see some champions to jump in.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe we do. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what kind of level of participation they used to get. My understanding was it started big and waned a little bit, but I'm not actually sure that that's true.
Oh, we always had like a pretty good. I mean, here in our local scene, we always had pretty good participation. It was fun. You just bring like crazy stuff, and by the end of it, you'd have a unit that was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well,
like you say, that stuff takes a lot of work. A lot of planning, and
yeah.
Sometimes stuff comes up in your life and you just can't make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Community building is it's a full-time job on top of things a lot of times for depending on the group of people.
Yep. Absolutely. So are we? Do we think we're in consensus that a year is about right?
Yeah.
I like that time, but
maybe
I think,
they could play with the content a bit.
Yeah, play with the content
Yeah.
of it. But I'm a big fan of the yearly release.
Yeah, I think it's the volume of content. I think we're just feeling a bit of the aftermath, a little bit of a hangover from this one, where it was a lot of changes. Like, I think there's a couple other posts about halflings and like how not many of them have been in many GTs at this point because people are still painting them, right?
Well, think about it.
them.
And there's no alternative model ranges.
Right.
Yeah. And around the time of that Clash of
Limited.
Kings pack, there was the Halflings' new army, Riftforge Orcs' new army, plus the massive amount of changes to all the existing armies.
Well, that's the
So-
thing. Like,
It was really just so much, a ton of content.
And I actually think we'll see. I think halflings are going to come up to a very competitive army. I think once some of these guys that build it get their hands on it, because I just think with some of these armies is not unlike dwarves, is like people have a thing in their head is well, I need all my units and 3 hammers, right? But I don't think that's how halflings plays. Like it's MSU style, lots
very
of stuff,
synergistic. Yeah.
nimble, I just think we'll see them. They're an excellent scenario army. Excellent scenario army. Yep. So they might not win under current scoring systems. This is something I've been exploring recently, actually, in terms of scoring systems. And I know we've done the Blackjack Northern Kings thing to death, so I don't really want to talk about them. But a way maybe to get back closer towards win-loss draw, which often is defined by number of games, but you still need some sort of split. And what I don't want to see if you do that is you don't really want someone who's doing, who gets 2 draws or something, potentially beating someone that has almost all wins.
Yeah.
So I've been wondering, does it work if, let's just say, if you have 64 players and you play 6 games, that's the right amount to get a win-loss draw. But do you still have points ascribed but you just have the gap bigger? So maybe a win,
Big
20,
win, small win,
10,
draw,
losses.
small loss, big loss. Five. You and I are on the same page. I've been thinking about this because we use win-loss draw at Kings of Memphis, and I'm thinking, man, Keith Mantle always says how easy, he probably thinks, it is an easy tournament. Maybe I just need to make the scenario a little bit harder. Maybe just the score system a little bit harder.
Well, I
Because the granularity doesn't necessarily, like, once you get past a certain point of granularity, you're it's not even just diminishing returns. It actually takes away a little.
Let me throw this out there. So I am a connoisseur of many, many podcasts, including 40K ones, and Canhammer just returned from Chris Haynes, the gentleman, one of the hosts, is the captain for Team Canada for WTC, and he's come back and they use I'm not an expert at this, but they use what's called a differential scoring system, where it's capped. So like, I wonder if that's something we, I don't know, is that something we need to look at where your big wins are brought down, and your really, really bad losses are brought up a little bit, and it's sort of pushed. I don't know.
Well, what I like about say some tournaments having with lost draw like Kings of Memphis is that what we've seen with, maybe it didn't happen so much as Masters as we could have, but if people are given lead time, you will see a change in army build, right? So you do have the ability of some of these armies that are actually quite good, like dwarves, like halflings, that are good at scenario play but not good at the attrition game. So it would actually change probably that you would see some differentiation in the builds or people bringing different things. And I don't think that's a bad thing, Well,
let me ask you guys this. Why have attrition? It's not part of the normal. It's not part of the rule book. Is there a way to play play scenario?
Well, yes, but I think then you need points subscribed to win-loss draw still, right? Which is at that point isn't pure win-loss draw.
Yeah, it's not 15-10-5. It's whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but yeah, totally. If you've got the right points, but you probably still, there will always be the chance that 2 people tie, and you need something to break that tie.
I think a pure win-loss draw, someone who wins, if pillage 6-1, that's a different game than 4-3. It's just that should be scored differently, I think. Like,
which was the idea of Blackjack, right?
Yeah.
And to and by the same token, Northern Kings, but also when we originally designed Blackjack, is we were seeing with the old 20-0 system, you could get people see really high attrition draws and still almost win the tournament, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. If you get +5 or +4,
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where I like Blackjack, where it's a comparator versus Northern Kings, where it's just like what you did, irrespective of what your opponent did. I don't like that.
Well, but in Northern Kings, like if I take a token, then that means you can't take that token, right?
Yeah.
So,
like with attrition though.
With attrition, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so the other side is that you could do a version of Blackjack just without any attrition scoring.
Yeah.
Right. You could change up, and essentially, which like tournaments do versions of anyway, is basically
I mean,
you just forget attrition, and it's how well did you win the scenario.
Yeah, and a lot of like, I know Rob's been to them. That's sort of a lot of the deal with Texas tournaments, right? They're super wonky, but they have tons of modifiers so you get a lot of like winning draws, like 12-8 that in a normal game would be, 17-18 to whatever. But they make it so that there's for those close wins, there is a sort of feeling like, well, I won the game, but it was so close. It's like I guess it feels more like what you would think a winning draw, or it adds just a little that space for like a small win.
Yeah.
So I think that's like
Well-
what you guys mentioned. That's the place that I think is explorable. Is how do we capture the winning draws, or losing draws, or versus the big wins? Like, how do we find that sort of space within
Yeah.
the?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Or
wanna
you do
stratify
something
a little
like
bit.
Dave's suggesting.
Yeah.
Like I think and American tournaments do this way better than Australia, and probably better than the UK is setting their, theming their own tournaments with secondary objectives. I mean, the thing is then I guess you risk that being thrown out of balance. But if everyone's read the rule pack, then it's fair game as far as I'm concerned. But that could be an area that COF looks to take a bit of direction in trialing things.
I think
All right, we've got this scenario that exists. What if we put a layer in there?
Yeah.
What if we put a layer in there?
to take a page like out of Infinity, you have a mission, but then you have classified objectives, and like they don't need to be secret to your But in Infinity, you draw 2 cards or whatever, and they're objectives you have to do without your opponent. Your opponent doesn't know what they are, so you can assassinate this one person or control this thing, and then they don't need to be secret, but just having something added on that isn't too complicated. It has to be less complex than the overall scenario, because then if you're trying to keep track of too many things in the game, it just bogs it down. But
it could be as simple as like as in a lot of tournaments do there in the US. Did you kill the enemy general? Like the general is nominated, or or did you kill their most expensive unit? Drew's asked a question about what's the downside of.
I mean, the downside it's the same downside with every system. It changes the armies that show up. Right. Like,
Plus, also, it's not
super
easy. You got to think at the end of the game and do math, right? So that to me, one of the knocks on it would be that it is better for gaming to just have something you go, I look at that and that's a 20-5, and not have to do quite as much. It can be confusing for newer players.
Yeah,
and which I think is the same knock on Northern Kings.
Yeah, I think, and then there's some benefits to having comparative scoring, and then there's some benefits to having, independent scoring. And I think, like we found, when you have you get a lot of, unit strengths 1 monsters and heroes in certain scoring systems, right? And then, or you have a lot of shooting, or you have a lot of just, unit strength spam regiments and certain things. So it can dictate your army composition.
Is there a fictional system out there?
No, I mean, how I feel about how I feel about blackjack is like democracy. It's not the best form of government by any means, or a constitutional republic, whatever. But it's sort of the thing that we have right now that seems pretty good most of the time. That's how I feel about like blackjack. It's by means perfect, but I think in general, it's probably for the most times the best tournament scoring system.
Yeah, and the other knock that people brought up in the comments is the fact that people get 0. And that was one of the things the Northern Kings said was about.
I just want to bring that. I would like to mention. I have a bone to pick with that point, just because if you get 5 in Northern Kings, that's a 0. I'm sorry, folks.
Yeah.
You got 0.
That's exactly how I feel.
They just raised the floor and are telling you it's the table. It's the floor still.
Yeah. I know. So that's theoretically just psychology, right?
Yeah. And it's
the whole idea of blackjack was that it was actually much harder to get 0 than under 20-0, right? 20-0, it was pretty easy to get a 0. So
getting a real blackjack is difficult. A lot of big wins will end up 19-21.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm thinking in my head, what you were talking about earlier, Matt, like this modulated win-loss draw. I mean, we've been doing that in the States for years. I'm trying to think if maybe one of the packs from Mike Carter. I mean, he's been running those kind of scoring system. That's funny.
I will be emotionally logical, Paul. I'll have you know. I'm very passionate about logic.
But sorry, finish off that point. You were looking for Rob. What was that?
I was just thinking in my head, that's where Kings of War started. Was win-loss draw out of the book, and then right away it was win-loss draw. But if you got this many more objectives, you get this tweak to the points.
Well, from version 2, they always publish the 20-0 system. So from version 2, straight in the book, I'm pretty sure, was the 20-0 system that was attrition-based, and that's where we started. And what we started to see is that, I mean, the whole genesis of blackjack is we saw super elite armies that could smash face, right? And this is prior to unit strength as well, right?
Right.
And so Blackjack was actually bringing
Well,
in this
I mean, you had
idea of
cost.
how well.
You had
Yeah.
unit cost, right? That's how they.
Yeah, well, that.
Yeah.
then
Oh
the
yeah, attrition was based. Oh yeah, I
dragon
mean,
list that were you know.
or why you would take Morgoth because he was impossible to kill. So right off the bat, there was an X
Yeah.
amount of points that your
Yeah.
opponent couldn't get. You know.
Yeah, and so
He's really good at
really
dominating.
interestingly, the whole idea of Blackjack to start with, like there were multiple ideas, but one of them, well, the main two were stop people having multiple draws winning tournaments, in over people that went all wins or one loss, and two was to change up army construction. And it just happened that shortly after its release, unit strength came in, and so it took that bias even further of what was already an intention, and then the rules just happened to change and probably took it even further to this higher drop game.
So
Yeah.
speaking of unit strength, some people, there's another thread that I saw this week about fixing Titans, flying Titans and other Titans, and differentiating them from monsters. And someone said unit strength 2 for flying Titans might have been a Matt Crozier idea.
Yeah, well, look, I have to say I got it elsewhere. I think I said it publicly on that thread. But, yeah. Well, no, I think I said it in a stream, but I can't claim it as just my idea.
But I think there is some room in that room for tweaking unit strength too, right? I think they did a good job with the infantry regiments, and hordes, and the under 100 points unit strength 2. That does help, but I think there's still some room to play around with unit strength.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just makes sense, right? You've got this, how do we want to get more of these, and which are primarily awesome models from Mantic, like some of their best stuff, right? At Titans.
Mm-hmm.
How do we get them on the table? And in a game where we're seeing most scoring systems revolve around, and the scenarios revolve around unit strength, that's an easy tweak.
It makes sense. If you have a Titan versus a regular monster, how is the Titan not more of a battlefield presence than a regular monster?
Yeah,
so make it like, you could even make it like 0.5 or whatever. If you didn't want to make it like 2, just make it something like
just rescale unit strength, right?
Yeah.
And then you can have it, make it more granular.
Do we need anything that's 0? Like, should individuals be half a point, or war machines be half a point? Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, that would be a pretty wild.
It's interesting. I played
they're using it to the lack of unit strength is a way to detract from taking that, right? That's when they wanted when they wanted you to stop taking 9 war engines. They're like, they don't
let's make it 0.
Yeah, so you got like a 30 armies.
But could it be the tweak that brings war machines back? Like, because at the moment,
here's the flip side of that argument. But then you got these freaking packs of 5 gunners and the dwarves. They're unit strength 1, and they do just as much damage as a war engine, and they score.
Exactly.
So I don't.
Same amount of points,
and you don't get triple attacks against them. So
it's so I don't know. Is it fair?
That's the thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that. I mean, you could even try it on the war machines where there's the biggest problem, right? Which is bolt throwers. Yes. You could say in a Clash of Kings, so if we revert it back to our original topic, this Clash of Kings, let's try making them unit strength half or 1. See what happens.
Or give them like a 10-point upgrade for unit strength or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the negatives too about getting war engines unit strength is the fact that if you're playing pillage, you can just set them on tokens. Right?
I mean,
that's kind of bullshit, right? Like, let's be honest.
The first tournament I ever played with, Britain beat me with his token-carrying flame belchers behind stupid greater earth elementals. So we're stopping this conversation.
It's over. It's over.
We're stopping it right now.
Is that why you're twitching, mate?
Yeah, he's been like, it's been sputtering. At the corner of his mouth, he's just been like bubbling.
Yeah, I just been like, nope.
I do wonder though, if we look at the type of scenarios that get played at tournaments, if it just like the scoring system, if it's affecting, well, I know it is. It's affecting the builds, right? So you've got what I would call like the movement or the control scenarios where you're trying to get unit strength to a certain spot on the board, right? You have loot token scenarios where you're trying to get loot tokens either in your possession or to a certain spot on the board, right? And you've got objective markers where you're just trying to control. I mean, I guess objective markers and unit strength control is kind of the same thing, right? I guess
they're similar, yeah.
Pillage, right? Pillage and control. I mean, you got 7 versus 6 boxes. I don't know. And then you got the weird ones like Bluff or Raise, which Salty Earth, which is I love it, but it's a brutal scenario, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well, what do we feel? You mentioned it before, Alex, about I don't know. Every time I roll a bluff scenario in a play that's not in a tournament, I'm always like, let's re-roll.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
know. I'm kind
We
of
take
like,
them out of a lot of tournaments just
I
because.
get it that it was a cool idea, and I'm not poo-pooing on anyone who developed it. But at this point, I feel like I'm kind of like, I don't know, lukewarm
I
about
actually don't
them.
disagree, and I know, same as Alex, a lot of tournaments that deliberately don't use them because of one, player friendliness, but two, you're not guaranteed everyone's turning up with appropriate tokens to be able to play it,
Yeah.
right? So, and I tend to have one if it's a 2-day tournament, and I tend to put it in somewhere like I don't have it as the end of game scenario. But yeah, I think you probably only need one of that style
Yeah.
in your
what was
12 scenarios.
Yeah. The
what was the
difference.
scenario that had it doesn't exist anymore, but it had a 3-point token, 2 2-point tokens, 2 1 points, and 2 zeros, maybe, or was it?
That's one of the. Those are the bluff tokens.
No.
That's still there, mate.
Before all this,
Yeah.
there was another
Oh.
one. It even had a 3-point token,
You'd roll. I believe there was a pillage
Oh.
scenario where you would roll a
Yes.
D3, right? to
and they were
determine-
random, right?
To determine. So each it was pillage, but the tokens were worth different values.
Yeah.
I like that one. I forget what it was
Yeah,
called,
what-
but it was a fun.
I mean, I
scenario.
actually, my bigger issue with the scenarios at the moment is I don't like. I basically feel that loot and push are almost the same, right? So,
Well, they are the same.
like I know you
and
get
push
the
and
double for
invade.
getting
No,
across the
push
line,
and
but
invade are
when you've got-
exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
when
loot
you've
and
only got
plunder.
12 scenarios, they're probably
Yeah.
just a bit too
Too
similar.
samey. Too samey. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like we used to have Scour, which was flawed but fun. For me,
We had to go to the chest and pick out of the 3 spots and pick
Yeah.
up points, right? Pick up
Yeah.
tokens. Pick up a
That
loot
was-
token.
right.
Dude, there were some great ones. Eliminate, people don't really like to kill shit, but like I used to like Eliminate. It was
It's
like
better
kill their
than
most
kill in a
expensive
lot of
deal.
ways. We were thinking I read there was kill at the end of day 1, I think, of King Beyond the Wall that got rolled, and half the people are happy and half the people aren't happy. Like not everyone likes kill as a scenario, but I think
It's just,
it works
there's armies
because
that do it well, there's armies that don't do it well.
well, that's the thing. People build to the scenarios, right? So if you build a unit strength only scenario based army and you get faced with kill, well, you skewed your list and now you have to deal with it. The
Mhm.
Yeah,
consequences.
I actually like the idea of kill in a 2-day
Yeah.
tournament.
It's
Yeah.
really important.
And again, I don't think even people need to be told that it's coming, right? Because
No.
a lot of tournaments don't release what you're going to play because
Yeah.
then
Well, let's
that
say we had to say,
encourages
Out of
specifically
these
skilled
10
people more.
scenarios, we just
Well, I mean,
you know.
think about it. There's armies that do kill very well that don't do objective play very well. The way they win the scenarios is by killing the opponent.
Exactly.
So I think there's some value to. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what we're doing, scoring system scenarios, it's about creating parity and allowing different army builds to come
yeah.
and be
But I-
competitive.
But I think getting rid of one of the loot tokens, one of the bluff token scenarios, and just like adding in a couple scenarios that are slightly different would go a long way into just freshening things up.
Is she down there in the murder basement with you, Felix?
Yeah. Is she in the murder basement with you, Felix? Or is it the problem that you're typing and you're actually commenting out loud, hoping we'll
Yeah.
hear you?
You're like, they didn't put my comment on the screen yet. What's going on? Assholes.
Scour. What was Scour?
There's the 3 spots on the board, and if you controlled it starting turn
That was
2
for
or
cumulative
3,
scoring.
You could pull
Yeah.
a loot token off per turn.
you could pull a loot token, and it was problematic in some respects for some armies, but that's also true. But
No,
you know
but
what?
She mustn't know what a big deal you are, Felix.
You're a celebrity. You're international
Yeah.
celebrity.
Yeah, Mrs. Castro, your partner is a big deal.
Mhm.
Okay,
He is loved
an
by
international
people all over
celebrity.
the world.
He's loved by at least 20 people.
Well,
At
he
least.
finished
23
13th
at last count.
at DashCon. He finished 13th. That's pretty good.
Yeah,
Oh,
Top
Felix
half.
stepping up.
best halfling. So that's
Mhm.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
middle human, right? Best.
We should talk about TNT, huh? They ended up with 31 players, but like, I don't know, man. This might be the end of Lucia Brawlers because like they suck. I ain't gonna lie. So, other than the people they picked
Tell
up,
us what you
Tell
really
us-
think.
I'm
Other than-
curious
Oh,
where this is going.
Rob.
hang on.
How much do you have to drink tonight?
All right,
Rob?
hang on. No. Here we go. All right, so look at this. Look at this though. So outside of like picking up Kyle Poole, but let's be honest, he's not a BCB guy, right? So we dropped down here to Kyle Poole, and then we dropped Felix. The only person that finished in the top half is Dan Kamek. It's like, look at all these Blues brawlers down here.
Yeah, man, they really stink.
Come on, man.
King's War is not about winning, Rob. It's about having a good time.
I guess that's true. It's
I
about
thought you out of
drinking and having a
everyone
good
would have
time.
understood that, Rob.
Hey, I'm a tournament winner, bro. I've got two under my belt.
I used
I'm
to
there to
do it,
win.
Alex.
There's,
I used to
there's
win my own
lots of
tournaments.
feelings and opinions tonight by everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of feelings. A lot
A
of feelings.
All right,
A lot
what
of drops,
I
too.
Rob's what is it? I just learned this new language from the hip young kids. He's feeling a certain way. Is that what they say?
Yes.
He's feeling a type of way.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm feeling wore out because yesterday I went to IKEA and bought a display case. It took me like 3 hours to put the damn thing together.
He's a little
For my
grouchy.
daughter.
He's got the IKEA. He's grouchy because of IKEA.
Yeah.
Doesn't he look like the way he's kicked back in his chair? He looks like he's about to hit full grouch mode. He looks like he's about 6 cans in.
Let me tell you
cans
back
in,
in my
and
Yeah,
day.
he's
about to
talking hella
unleash.
crap about his home region, so he's got to
Yeah.
get into like full Grinch mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just, I don't know, like, because like, the juxtaposition to this, like, we went to TNT, we didn't have a great show, right? And then like we sent 40K players to St. Louis this weekend, and we won the event. It's like, I don't know, do we want to be winners or do we want to be losers? I guess we want to be losers.
So to you, Rob, what is the problem
We
with
can't
Blue
always
City
hire-
Brawlers? Is it
Oh,
that
don't
their players
get
suck,
him
or
going,
not
Matt.
taking
Come
control of
on.
his armies?
Yeah.
Do the players
I'm gonna
suck,
get
or
all
are they
these
not
messages
competitive
tonight.
enough?
Why
you
is
know what?
Rob so
I
mad
am
at
looking, though.
everyone?
Yeah, no. Congratulations to Jeff O'Neill. He took it out, and big surprise, not big surprise, but huge shout out to Kat Royer, who I
Yeah.
know she didn't have the greatest finish at Masters. Went and I think she played Jeff like top table.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, John Blakemore, not Jack, and John Jackson's dad finishing a second. So awesome. Actually, you want to hear something funny? He makes a funny joke. I just threw away a bunch of trophies. Like I had like the only one I kept from before Kings of War was my Throne of Skulls best painted trophy from GW. I threw the rest away, and then now I've got the Manticon trophy. Actually, you know what? This is another pet peeve of mine. This is my first award when I won a 35 player event. A freaking medal. I don't.
Do you
think
sometimes
that's
wear
cool.
that to
I
bed?
don't know. No, I actually it almost got the chopping block.
Business.
He'll wear,
Business
he'll wear that and nothing else.
Yeah.
His socks are on. You know it's time.
Socks in his medal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
No, but
I have
the
to.
point. Like, go ahead.
I was just gonna say Dan Kamek. I got to play him at Masters,
He's
and
awesome.
he's a BC, but he is a
He's the
top
best of the
flight
crowd. He's the best
player.
of the crowd.
I mean, he is an amazing painter, but he is an amazing tactician. He is.
Oh,
He
yeah.
doesn't get enough credit for being an all-around threat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem is he doesn't. I don't think he takes it seriously. Right. I think if he did take it seriously, he'd be better. Right. Because I mean, he did well. He won Hillbilly one year when he was like 16. And Hillbilly, for those who don't know, was like a 150-ish man event here in the Mid-South in Warhammer Fantasy. I mean, he's a good player, man. No doubt about it.
I think it's a really good point, though, isn't it? You get very good players who don't necessarily want to build the most competitive army, right?
Yeah.
And just because, and this is an interesting point for when it comes to play testing, RC, whatever. I don't think you need the top tournament players to be doing all the heavy lifting, right? It's. I think you can get very good brains who aren't rising to the top at tournaments.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of variables that come into whether someone does rise to the top.
Well,
And
what's
sometimes you
interesting?
need someone who doesn't think like everyone. Like if there's some form of groupthink making people, succeed, you don't necessarily just want them. to be making up all the changes. Like you need people who are thinking outside that paradigm to actually see if there's something else to be done.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think he's actually close pushing 30, but he does look young. I'll give you that. But you bring up a good point. This year I won Shiloh with a bullshit all defense 6 list, right? And then the very next tournament, and I won the tournament because I got lucky. Right? I got good matchups and I got good rolls. And then I took the exact same list to the next tournament, and I got thunderstomped by like good players, but like lists that I should have been able to beat, but I didn't. So at some point, I was just like, you know what? I'm not progressing as a player. Playing one way to go. And so, like, I'll be honest with you, like, even though I'm like 50-50 in my games with Kingdoms of Men, I have to think a hell of a lot harder. I have to play a lot harder. I've got to like pull shenanigans out at the end of the game, like putting like against Kyle. The only way I got the draw was I took an individual and put him in a position where he couldn't get to the token because he couldn't charge me and he couldn't get within an inch of me, and therefore he couldn't get to control the token.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
like you got to like play. Go ahead.
Well, and I think
Go ahead,
it's a good point. Like when you're like you will sometimes, well, most of the time, actually not take those armies, right? I will very rarely take a tuned army to a tournament, but you can still talk about understand the game and know where it's at, and it's just different strokes for different boats. Like it just means you don't necessarily need, and it's probably not a good idea to have those top people, making all the decisions or,
you definitely
giving
shouldn't.
all the feedback.
Or then you have people like Pat Allen, who's a top level player who just does weird stuff with lists all the time, and you're like,
Or I know people. He's my buddy, so I'm biased, but people give him a hard time. But Jeff Swan's like that too.
Exactly.
He wins a lot of tournaments with crazy. Not that his lists are bad; they are very good lists.
Yeah.
But they're lists in these weird, unconventional ways that you would never think. And he, Tom Annis did a thing where it's like Jeff and Dustin Howard have won like 68% of all Texas tournaments in Kings of War. That's pretty freaking crazy,
Yeah, and Jeff Trace is not dissimilar, right?
Oh
in
yeah,
Australia.
He's another unique builder guy. Yeah, for sure.
Like he definitely has a style, but no one else really has aped it to success, right? Like
No.
you can see, if you see a Trace list, you're like, yeah, I know who wrote that, but you're like, no one else is like going out and really like using those lists and dominating.
No.
And winning tournaments is just hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
You need everything to go your way. You need to play right.
You
You
gotta
need to have a good
You gotta
list.
get the matchups, and you
Totally.
can't make mistakes. Your dice have to be like at least partially kind.
Yeah, it's not an easy
5
thing
games
to
is
do.
a long weekend. Yeah.
I've only ever done it with ogres twice.
Yeah.
Like 5 years apart. I don't know,
Queensland is our Texas, Felix. Please don't tar the whole of Australia with that brush. Queensland is our Texas.
Is that where the dirty Australians come from, Matt?
Exactly.
Are those
dirty,
bogans?
dirty,
Or are those
missing teeth?
Yeah, they got to get hosed off.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to hose them off before they even get into After Dark. They're so dirty. Is what you're saying?
Exactly. That's
Okay.
exactly what it's about.
you wouldn't understand a word out of their mouth?
Yeah.
That might be a good topic for next week, though. What is the motivation behind playing the armies that they play? In some places it could be I want to bring the filth, right? Because I mean, there's been times where I'm like, you get really title stomped, and you're just like, all right, cool. I'm bringing 9 War Engines next week. Let's see how we get on with that. And then you do it once, you're like, yeah, this is dumb. So it'd be interesting to hear.
Or you take Twilight Kin the Masters and get horrible sports scores. That's what I've learned.
You're blaming the Twilight Kin on. You know what?
Maybe I'll take a little bit better.
Maybe you need to look in the mirror, Jeremy. Maybe you look in the mirror instead of blaming the list.
Asshole.
Don't blame. Who made the list? Who made the list?
I have only myself to blame.
Yeah, I always have a story that I tell that we went to a tournament where first place and last place had the same list, and it all depends on where you're playing, and even at Masters.
Yeah, and like yeah, I want to make it clear. Like, I think Night Stalkers is overpowered, but I don't want to take that away from people that win Masters with them.
No,
right?
they
'Cause
still gotta win.
it still
Yeah.
requires a very good general, right? But I think
Yeah.
when you get a list that is that tuned and then you add a really good general, it's a problem. You know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean Adam's been winning everything with any list, and he's been
Mm.
he's been in the Masters discussion with when he was playing weird shit. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and he
Oh, we
toiled
talk
with
about him every
EOD
year, no matter
for
what he's done. Yeah.
he's been he was
Elves,
using
yeah.
EOD when no one wanted to use them, and
Yeah.
Mm.
But,
but
yeah,
I think there's just something to be said like about list hipsterism, right? It's like you want to take the hardest list you can without it really appearing to be, full on.
my favorite though, Alex,
filth
is
mode,
when you
right?
meet those guys that are so full of shit that they're trying to tell you, they're trying to sell you that their list isn't hard. It's like,
Yeah.
bro, come on, man.
No, that's the thing. Like,
You know who you are out there.
yeah, when I came beyond the wall, it's like my opponent's like, that list is disgusting, and I was like, thank you. Like, I'm like,
he just grew a foot taller.
I'm like Joey Greek and I have been working on this list for like months. Like, this is not like something that happens by accident.
yeah.
Well, boys, should we wrap it up? Interesting discussion.
Let's
We kind of
wrap it
bounced around a little bit. We touched a little bit on, our thoughts on Clash of Kings. I think Clash.
Adam,
Sorry,
speak of the devil. The Adam challenge.
Oh no,
Good every year,
it's not hard. It's very squishy, but it's
It's a
also
terrible
very,
scenario. Armin.
very pokey at the same
Everything's
time.
cheap though. That's the problem. Everything's
Yeah.
cheap and everything's chaff, and
Yeah.
it plays scenarios better than anybody.
It-
And then when you give it to Adam, right? Like if you give it to me, people will be like, "Yeah, it's not whatever. I can still be Rob." But like you give it to Adam, it's like Rain Man over there. No.
Yeah. All right. Well, should we wrap it up?
Yeah, it was
I think
fun,
so.
fellas.
Great show.
Thanks for
a good
joining
one
us,
to note
guys.
on.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
And
I
done,
think
yeah.
so. All it takes is one bad day to. Oh, not Jeremy on listen.
Actually, I have one more thing to say. I had training today, and it was about getting in a growth mindset, and I couldn't get Jeremy out of my head the whole time. Like,
He's
thinking
just
of,
over your shoulder.
Jeremy talking to me. Yeah,
You got to
Get
do
in the
it, baby.
growth mindset.
Growth
Obstacles
mindset.
are a pathway to mastery.
Pathway to mastery. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kingdoms of Men are a pathway to mastery. You didn't know that?
Oh yeah. Well, once you learn how to win with them, you could just win with your fucking anything, Rob. Just
Exactly.
half an army.
Exactly. Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys. Thanks
Okay,
for joining
see ya.
us. Until
Have a
next
good night.
time, keep countercharging.
Counter charge.